we would buy a flat one at a time, and we were very well capitalised. We each had 3 gold cards, and in those days you'd get a gold card from the bank with a 10 grand overdraft. Didn't have to answer many questions, just had to be able to know your name and sign. So that was how we started. We have to make a planning profit for our model. We could do without it now, as we built up some capital within the business, but we don't want to. We're ambitious. We're having a lot of fun, and probably that's the most important thing. We've got to have fun, and whoever we work with, we've got to enjoy working with.
What would you be doing if you didn't get into property?
Not a fucking clue.
Welcome to the People Property Place podcast. Today, we are joined by Nigel, co-founder of the Fusion Group. Nigel set Fusion Residential up in 2006 with business partner Warren Rosenberg, where they sourced land and built remarkable homes. In 2012, they formed Fusion Students, where, you guess it, they focus on developing and managing UK student accommodation. They've developed over 5,000 PBSA beds with a pipeline of over 9,000 beds underway. And this is where Nigel now spends the majority of his time. In addition to his work at Fusion, Nigel advises some younger companies in the property world and is a trustee of several charities. And it gives me great pleasure that he is here today. So Nigel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Not at all. Well, look, you are a proper entrepreneur, and I'm really interested to kind of get into the weeds of your background and how you've been able to do what you have done over your career. But I know you've also got a phenomenal amount of energy and excitement for the future as well. So we'll come on to Fusion and your plans for the future and a bit about the market too. But a place that I always like to start these conversations is how and why did you get into real estate?
So my story of how I got in, well, let's go back a few years when I was at school. And I was doing very well at a top school in the UK that I managed to get one of very few scholarships into. We're still not quite sure how I got it, but maybe no one else turned up, but I got it. I met my current wife, only wife, when I was 15, 45 years ago. And I decided she was far more important than school. So I screwed up all my exams and then ended up going to school with her to retake them. My parents loved me for that. At that time, had Saturday jobs, Sunday jobs, paper rounds. And with a friend, as soon as I started driving when I was 17, still at school, we did the outdoor markets, proper markets, not city markets, on Saturdays and Sundays. And
food markets, you mean?
Well, we were selling watches when the first digital watches came into the UK, £2.99 a watch. And so we made quite a lot of money at the weekends. And I looked at these teachers who were earning a lot less than I was earning on a Saturday and Sunday and thought, yeah, they're mugs. What do they know? Little did I realise. So I left school early, didn't finish my A-levels, and went into the markets, forgetting how cold winter can be in England, how cold, wet and miserable, and how not every day is a Saturday or Sunday. Soon realised it wasn't for me, realised I'd made a major error, thought about going back to school, but probably wasn't brave enough, but wasn't sure what to do. Had no idea. I was sort of an office job as being stuck in a small room with a bunch of paper in front of me, not talking to anybody all day. So a friend of mine was an estate agent, and she said, you will absolutely love it. You're talking to people all day long. You're in the office, out the office. It's perfect for you. So off I went to arrange my first interview. Before I did that, I had to check with a couple of friends, what's the difference between detached, semi-detached and terrace? Had no idea. And off I went for my interview, winged it and got the job. That was in the West End. I got told off after a month for doing a deal. I was in a residential team at Lewis and Tucker. Left there after a few months because I was being paid £42.50 to come to work, but the train fare and lunches, I think, were about £52.50, and got a local job and somehow became a manager of an office after 3 months working in Wembley, and continued an agency, and always kept in contact with somebody who I was sitting next to at Lewis and Tucker. And we always said, one day we're going to be developers. And a few years later, I got married in 88. A couple of months later, I decided if I'm going to do something myself, I've got to get on and do it now. I always wanted to have my own business.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 23 when I got married, 24 when I started on my own.
And you left school at 16?
17.
17?
Yeah, 17. So
for that period, you sold some watches, $2.99. What were your margins on those?
Oh, it was good. Can't remember exactly, but it was good. If you sold them.
If it
wasn't raining.
So you sold those, then you kind of moved into a estate agency and you kind of cut your teeth in terms of doing residential.
Yeah, so mainly resi, did a little bit of commercial. There was one job that attracted me because it was doing commercial and resi, which stopped me having to go back to the beginning again to learn commercial. And then after I got married, I decided, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. Yeah, I'd like to have kids quickly. So once that started, it would never happen. So later that year, I set up with a friend our first business called George and Square Properties, and we bought and sold residential. And we had a small office, my partner's father-in-law's flat in Hendon, and we would buy a flat one at a time. And we were very well capitalized. We each had 3 gold cards, and in those days you get a gold card from a bank with a 10 grand overdraft. Didn't have to answer many questions, just had to be able to know your name and sign. So that was how we started, with 3 gold cards or 6 gold cards between us.
So to be clear, you set up a business and it was to go and buy residential properties.
Yes, without money.
Without money. But it wasn't as an estate agent, it was as a kind of a principal, right? As
a principal, with a view that if we do a little bit of agency for the first couple of years to keep money coming in, we should do it. And we did a couple of agency style deals, not quite standard agency deals, but we did a couple. And we'd buy a flat. We'd leave the office at 4:00, pretend we were painters. Or in one, there was a terrible damp issue, so we had a survey the next morning. So we went there with some shake and vac, which smells lovely, put it on the carpet, hoovered it in. And we do anything we could at that time in the residential market, mainly smaller units. After a year, we went in different directions. And I then my business sort of transformed into a very, very mini version of what I do today, which is buying larger buildings, converting them into smaller units and letting them. Those were at that time, very old HMOs around Willesden, Maida Vale. And some I bought, some I leased. So I also saw a gap in the market there with shop and upper parts, where a lot of commercial investors would buy shopping parades, but really had no interest in the upper parts. So we leased some upper parts, got a year's rent free. That gave us some money to refurbish them, or I say refurbish them, that sounds grand, literally tart them up, let them out as rooms, and create an excess income over and above the cost of the lease. Started buying some, then somebody I'd met a couple of years earlier put quite a lot of cash into our deals for about 5 to 10 years, which I was too proud to do at first. When he first approached me and said, I love what you're doing, we'll put the cash in and go 50-50. I thought, no, why would I want to give away half? Maths was never my best bit, because I didn't realize that 50% of £200 is better than 100% of £50. So did quite a few deals there, built that business up, and then in late 90s went into new build, and that was by accident. Went to look at a pub for conversion. Didn't work for conversion. we've also, in addition to the bedsits, by that time we'd started refurbishing and selling as well. So looked at this pub, realised poor conversion, didn't like it, started to drive away. It was in Harefield. And as I was driving away, went past a new build scheme. Never done a new build scheme before. And saw a similar sized plot. So I was with somebody else from my office. So let's just go back and let's drive back past, but drive past slowly, but maintain the same speed past the site we're looking at. So as we went past, click the window, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 houses there. Keep going. Same speed. Bloody hell, we're going to get 6 on ours. Worked out the numbers. So this is quite a good deal. So we bought it, and that was our planning due diligence at that point. Surprise, we didn't get 6, but we got 5. We had a bankrupt builder halfway through, so we needed to be on site, or I was there probably every day with our contractors, subcontractors, so learned a hell of a lot that way. So very grateful for that builder going bust. And ended up coming out just about okay on that deal, and then started building more and more resi.
So before we come on to that, just to catch up with the story, 16, you got a scholarship, or 15, you got a scholarship to go to a phenomenal private school.
11. I was
at 11.
Yes, and then threw it away when I was 16.
And you cocked it up, threw it away when you were 15. Yeah. You met your wife at 15.
Yes.
And you went to the local state school with her.
Yes.
And then you decided that school wasn't for you, and you're making more money than your teachers at that stage selling watches on the weekend.
Correct.
Got into a state agency, did well, but got fired, and kind of learned kind of the trade and the real estate space, and then slowly kind of started investing in developing real estate. But it all started with these 3 or 6 gold cards. So you got 30 grand each, but 60 grand in total. How much were you buying these flats for?
So you would buy a typical flat there for probably 30, 40,000 pounds.
So you were buying it in cash or debt based on these credit cards?
Yes.
Financing it
on gold cards.
On gold cards. Financing the finance, were you?
Yes.
Or financing the finance, letting it out. Or
that's never stopped, by the way, years later.
Financing the finance, letting it out and taking the income to pay off your debts, or just kind of doing it up and flipping it.
We were flipping them on. Yeah, we couldn't afford to keep anything at that point. So we needed to turn over to get the cash back, repay the credit card to be able to use it again to buy the next one.
So that's how you just built up kind of a little nest egg, was it? Or just capital?
And then a year later, when I went on my own, got an overdraft facility. It's something probably very hard to get now. It was a very modest facility, but it helped us build the business there.
And so in terms of kind of context, did you have any family in real estate or property, or?
No, my sister is actually a planning consultant, and a very good one. And she did a lot of work with us at the beginning. Her expertise was mainly residential. She was actually, when we took an office at one point, she came into our office, but no family. That was a decision, similar timing to me, but not connected at all with what I did. And that there was no family history in property.
And so it was a friend of yours who said you'd be a fantastic estate agent. And
I'm very grateful to that friend, and we're still very close with her.
What would you be doing if you didn't get into property?
Not a fucking clue. So, well, at one point when I had a few friends in the city, and I thought maybe this is for me. I joked about numbers before. Actually, that's probably the only thing I can do. Mental maths has always been okay. I thought, and this is when the markets were on the floor. Not on the floor.
The stock market.
The stock market floor. Yeah. And I fancied that. Didn't go for it in the end, and I'm very pleased I didn't, because as that market changed and came off a trading floor onto screens, it changed dramatically, and it was more personality driven on the floor. So I think I may have had half a chance there, whereas on the screen it's become far more difficult. But that was something I thought about doing. Always wanted to have my own business from being a young kid. There was always something that I was trading in the school playground. But I didn't know what that was.
You're always a wheeler dealer, entrepreneur, looking for your next opportunity to monetize something.
Absolutely.
And so fast forward to that point, developed those 5 houses, didn't get consent for 6. How big was your team at this size? And
it was a huge team. There was me and one other. And we grew that business probably into about 7-8 people in the end. It was never that many. And what we were quite good at doing was building. And we realized, I would say I know my way around a construction site, but I have zero understanding of the detail, but can work out if it's working or it isn't working. So, and also from developing for years, we knew how to get it right, and we just kept it simple. Going back to 1988, when I started, I also mentioned I got married, and on my honeymoon, I met Warren Rosenberg in Barbados, and we both knew each other's names. We were both young estate agents at the time, probably lived about 3 miles from each other, but we'd never met. We kept in contact. And Warren was also very young, very entrepreneurial guy. He was a partner in his own estate agents, I think in his early 20s. So he left there probably about 3 years later, about 91, 92, started his own development business, backed by an accountant who gave him a finite amount of money to spend. And anything over and above that, he would ring me up. We've run out of capital. Do you want to partner in a deal? He thought I had money. I would say, of course, we'd love to do that deal. I'd then ring up my backer, get the money. Never told Warren. Warren thought I was the wealthiest man on the planet. And
you'd take the margin.
And I'd get a little bit somewhere in the middle, and everyone was happy. And that's how Warren and I started trading. Warren did his own developments, but Warren's was probably far better than me, far better than I'll ever be at planning and design. But construction was not his strong point. Yeah, he's an absolute perfectionist, and that meant a job would take twice as long. It'd be absolutely beautiful when it was finished. Whereas I'd always realized, if we make mistakes, unless they're huge, we'll learn for the next one.
Done is better than perfect.
Yeah, get it built on program at the right cost. So we decided, we always got on superbly well. We did loads of deals on handshakes over the phone when he's on one beach, I'm on another. We decided we should do something together. But I had my existing business. He had his existing business. And so we took an office with 2 front doors, corner building, Henry Homes on one door. That's obviously me. Village Homes, Warren on the other door. And in between, we set up Fusion Residential. Fusion, why the word fusion? 2 companies coming together. And we had a little checklist, and if something came into his team or my team, we would do it. It met certain criteria: sales value over X pounds per foot, minimum profit over Y pounds in a certain area within about 20 minutes from our office. We would look at it together, and we loved working together. Always loved working together.
Were you competitive
with each other? He's probably competitive, but sadly he'll never beat me. So yeah. No, but we're both exceptionally competitive, but we have great fun with it. So Fusion Resi was born. We did quite a few deals under the Fusion Resi banner, but what we went for there was top end apartments in suburbia, 6 to 10 flats, selling for what's probably in today's money 3 million quid an apartment, 2-3 million quid an apartment in suburbia. You can't build 500 of those on one site. You can't build 100 of those. Anyone who bought them had to feel very lucky to be buying one. So they were small developments. Very, very hard business for us to scale. And we realized come 2012, 2013.
So you started this in 95, did you?
No, 2005.
2005.
Yeah. 2012, 2013, we said, we almost look at it, that we went out for many years doing the odd deal together. We got engaged. We set up an office together, doing a lot more together. Let's now get married. Let's do everything together. Yeah, we both bring different values to the business. So Fusion Resi. But then we realized come 2012 that we couldn't scale that.
Because it's just too small, too granular. The margins
were okay. But we could only build, it was as difficult building 6 to 10 flats at a build cost in today's money of probably 10 million quid to us building something that may cost us 100 million quid now. In fact, it's easier building the 100 million pound scheme. We can perhaps come on to that, but we didn't realize at the time, but it is. But we wanted to scale the business. We looked at various different ways we could do that. So part of my experience between 1998 and 2005 was building live work around Shoreditch, around Clerkenwell. Had lots of fun in those areas and just great areas to be in. And we still own some retail that's performed remarkably well in Shoreditch over the years. So in fact, we did the first scheme ever in Hoxton Square. And when I told my wife's grandfather, who was an immigrant, came into the UK, came into the East End, and I'd never heard the man swear in his life. He was the most lovely, lovely man. And he said to me, Hoxton Square, you fucking idiots. We used to go there for a punch up. It's come on a bit since then. So we were looking at different strategies. What could we do? What could we scale? Warren had been involved in 2 student schemes, not intentionally, or the one was intentionally, a small scheme in Hatfield. But before that, someone had come to Warren, and does Warren have an investor for a student scheme in Bristol? So Warren introduced, within Village Homes, there were 2 partners. There was Warren, and Warren had an investor, a guy called Roger Nagyoff, who happened to be my best mate until the age of 15 when I left my school. And if I've got a dodgy neck, that's because he always sat to my right and I always copied his homework, or his homework, sorry, not just his homework, everything during the day. And we hadn't seen each other for years. That was lovely when we came back and started working together. So Roger invested in that deal. Warren had a corner of that deal. Market went horribly wrong in 2007, 2008. In that time, Warren then needed to get far more involved to make sure he didn't lose any of Roger's money. We had 2 sides to our office. Our team dropped dramatically in that time, frightening times. I was looking at renting a home. I thought I'd go completely bust, and thankfully we traded out of it. But really horrible times for us as a business. And we learned a lot from that, and we learned ways to make sure that never happens again to us.
You're too levered with your gold cards, are you?
The gold cards had come and gone at that point, but they probably would have been easier than dealing with banks, standard banks and property lenders at that point. No, we had some challenging times. We only ever lost money on 1 scheme, which was brilliant for that time in the market. But the pressure that was put on us. So we changed our team. I had a far bigger team than Warren. We both reduced, and we moved from the whole office, which was almost split in 2 with the door in the middle, to one side. So when Warren was working his way through the student deal, he and I were sitting even closer than you and I are sitting now. We were literally almost on each other's laps. And I was helping him. He was helping me with some stuff. I had non-Fusion Resi stuff. So we got to know the market well. He got to know it far better than me, but I had a decent understanding. So come 2012, we said, what business can we go into? What asset class can we scale up? And there were 3 areas for us, really. There was a lower end of the market in residential. There was city living, live work. Though live work had changed a little bit at that point, but typical city living with mixed use schemes, or student housing. So the larger end of residential, standard residential build to sell, we didn't have the confidence in. And it's feast or famine in that business until you get to a certain size. As we used to say, you can have a bank account like a whore's knickers. They're up and down, and it's very hard. It's a very hard long-term business. You're as good as your last deal unless you have built enormous scale. Clerkenwell, Shoreditch markets, and maybe moving further east, we really liked, but again, hard to scale that. We went to a student conference together, and it was in the West End. I've grown up in the West End. My first job was there. I know quite a few agents, principals in the area. And when Warren said there's a conference, why don't we go to this? It's in the West End. I was really excited to see a bunch of old mates. Got there, didn't see anyone. The conference is about to start, and Warren's tugging my trouser leg. Sit down, sit down. He says he said this, but it wasn't. It was definitely me. And I'm looking around the room and looking at the people around the room, and I sat down. I said to Warren, this is what we're going to do. He said, it hasn't bloody started yet. I said, I don't care. I said, I'm just looking around at everyone in the room. There's no one that is thinking like us in the room. You could just see it was very...
So who was in the room at that stage?
It was very much, so residential. When we started in the residential market, and we weren't the first people to do this, but we were very, very design-led. Every house we built, every apartment we built was very different to the last one. It was what was right for that location, for that market, and what can we do to really move the dial? Not just to make it a little bit better than the one next door, but to really, really move the dial. And probably in the 70s, before we started, or I started, but in the 70s, maybe early 80s, house builders built boxes, and they'd have 3 box types, 3 house types, 4, 5, 6. And it could be in the armpit of the UK, or it could be Mayfair, and that's all they had. They didn't go outside of that. Whereas we were looking at thinking outside the box, being more design-led. What can we do? And I could just see all the very grey suits in that room. And I apologise if anyone's listening and had a different colour suit on. Maybe I'm colourblind, but it looked boring. It really looked boring. And I think at that time it was. And everyone was building very standardised buildings. Yeah, all with what they call clusters, which is a swear word in our office. They're apartments, they're not clusters. And there was no real imagination, no excitement going into the social spaces, no one actually thinking about how is that student going to live there, what is best for that student. So as the day went on, we realised, whether Warren said it or I said it, and it was definitely me, by the way, that it was the right business for us. We got really excited.
And up until this stage, just to be clear, you were developing, you were raising money, external money from investors, your network, who would fund the majority of the deals, you'd co-invest as well, turn around these properties, and it was kind of a typical kind of development.
Yeah, it was a small
structure.
What I would call very nice, wasn't so nice in 2007, 2008, but yeah, over the years, pretty nice lifestyle business. Yeah, we did okay out of it. We had a nice homes, not the biggest homes in the village, but nice homes. Went on nice holidays, but not endless holidays.
Yeah. Couple of kids by this stage?
3 kids. Didn't know what turning left on a plane meant. But we did okay. We were doing okay. But the turning point was when we went into student accommodation, because we scaled that really, really quickly. Our funding of the business before that was just our cash, and bank finance. And when we went into the student market, we realized, shit, this seemed like a good idea. We haven't got this sort of cash. So we went and set up a Fusion capital pot that friends and family invested into, and then they had loan notes, and then that took a loan note into our first property. We had 9 investors co-invest with us. And
they were kind of family friends, as you said, who'd seen what you've done, got involved with the vision and what you wanted to do moving forward, and kind of gave you that, not working capital, but initial investment to co-invest.
Just investment into buying. We've always bought well. We're not straightforward developers. Our excitement is buying something without planning that we can add real value to, and use that value as well in the capital stack, the sweat equity, to put a lot less pressure on our cash needs for each deal. And we still do that today. We're not we're not a developer. We'll go and buy something that's on the market showing a 16, 20% return. We may look at it to see if we can add value by changing the planning. There's a lot of resi developers, a lot of office developers at the moment who are seeing PBSA as a best asset class, but it's not their expertise. It's not their architect's expertise. And we can look at some of those schemes if they're in the right location. Most of them aren't, but if they're in the right location, we can look at those and see, can we turn 500 beds into 700 beds? Yeah. Can we really move the dial on it? So we will look at those, but pretty much we have to make a planning profit for our model. We could do without it now as we built up some capital within the business, but we don't want to. Yeah. In the last few years, when the market's been really tough, we've done well, and we've done well because we had big fat margins in there, because we had our planning margin and then our development margin. So when build costs went up 20, 25% over about 15, 16 months, we didn't like it, but we could deal with it.
You were insulated, whereas others were caught short. So you kind of started looking at these bigger sites, raise some kind of friends and family kind of capital, and you started doing some student deals. So
before that, if you take out the couple of deals that Warren did in the student space, the first one was really just a corner, but it was still 300 beds. Second one he did was 116 beds. That was the biggest we'd done between us. And we weren't, so the next one was 450. We've gone up to 850 now. We're involved in planning on a scheme at the moment. We hope to achieve 1,500 beds. It's more of a regeneration site with various use classes on there. So it was a bit of a jump, and it was quite a frightening jump to start with. Although it didn't take that long to realize that we should have done this 50 years, or not quite 50 years ago, but maybe 20 years ago. It became far easier dealing on scale. If we walked into a bank wanting to borrow 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 120 million now on some schemes, we've got their attention for a few minutes. Whereas when we were doing a little development in a back garden and wanting to borrow 3, 4 million quid, it wasn't so exciting for a lender. When we're going to a construction business, when we're going to any of our consultants, many of which we've worked with since we started, it's become a decent business for them to work with, decent size schemes, and we're dealing with far more professional people. So if anything, I would say our life has become, although it was very scary at first, never showed that, tried to hide that. We realized after a while, this is actually easier.
So actually thinking bigger and looking at a bigger play, it's scary in terms of the numbers and the sheer size and scale of it. But actually, when you get to those kind of numbers, it is easier, or there's more fat in there to play with.
We will only do it if there's more fat, but so I wouldn't say that's a general comment that there's more fat the bigger it becomes. Sometimes there's less competition on some really big deals. There's a couple we've looked at that, there's only, I think, us and one other that have managed to put bids in on. So therefore, if there's less players in that market, you should be able to get a better deal, should be able to. But I think it's just how professional, we're dealing with far more professional people, and everybody is far more responsive. When we're walking into some council planning teams outside of London and looking to build 600-700 units, they look at us and say, thank you for coming to see us. I'll turn around and look behind me. I'm not sure they're talking to me. But it's very different from sitting down in Hertsmere City Council trying to do a backland scheme where everybody hates you because that's what you're ruining their views. There's all the NIMBYism. We're in city centres. We've never not got a consent. It's a pretty remarkable track record our team have got. We've had to reapply a couple of times, had to roll our sleeves up more than once, but we've always got there. Whereas if you're building in suburbia, a small back garden scheme, it can take longer sometimes than building a city centre 600-700 bed scheme.
Quick one from me. If you haven't already, subscribed or followed this show on the podcast or app where you listen or watch, please do. It takes 10 seconds and helps tremendously. I've got really big plans for the People, Property, Place podcast, and that one small action really, really helps grow the show and the presence and enables us to keep doing what we're doing. So if you haven't already, please follow or like on the platform you watch or listen to. Thanks so much. Did you at this stage, did you have to really try and define your roles and responsibilities between you and Warren? And did you have to kind of go on a journey to institutionalize or professionalize or learn how to deal in this particular world? Or was it not as conscious as that?
I think it became more, we didn't have to think about our roles. It was very natural. Warren was really responsible at the beginning of the business for the design and the sourcing of deals. Even though I've been we can both do what each other do, but he does that far better than me. We've since taken on a much bigger team that, he now just oversees. So he's less involved day to day on that, but the whole setup was from Warren. And my role really was on finance. I can't remember what point in my life I realized if you can cross the city finance world with property and you can bring the two together, you could end up turning 1 and 1 into 3. So I always focus on the finance. What can we do with limited capital, and how can we stretch that business and get much greater returns for the investors? We weren't IRR driven. We still aren't. We look at it as a metric for each deal, but we're not driven by that because our goal is to have as little capital in there. So sometimes, the IRR can be so large compared to another deal, but the other deal may be better for other reasons. So it wasn't something we were driven by, but the finance we were. So that I dealt with, and really I would probably say the majority of the running of the business I dealt with. We realized quite quickly that we couldn't manage the business and do what we love doing and do it well. And we needed to bring in an MD. And there was a chap called Adam Cohen, who, if I roll the clock back, was at school with my wife and then became a very good mate of mine, and in fact was my best man. Adam was a CEO of a public company, Tops Estates. And when they sold the business, he went and worked for the family office, who were the principal shareholders of Tops, previous shareholders of Tops. And he left. And after about 5 years, it wasn't for him. And Adam was doing a little bit of work for us as we were expanding. And we kept saying, Warren and I kept saying that we need an Adam Cohen in our business. I said, lovely idea, but he's my best mate. It's not going to work. And Adam and I chatted one day, and he was looking for a role, and we spoke very openly. This has pros and cons. This may work, this may not work, but our friendship is far more important than business will ever be. So we literally made some notes and agreed, let's give it a go. And we've never looked back. Adam's now a partner in the business. So Adam has really been the main person to make us more user-friendly in the institutional world. We've learned as we've gone on. I've been very involved outside of work in charities and been fortunate enough to chair a few charities, and one in particular where we had some complex issues in our board. We had a merger, and I think learning as a trustee, that was probably my education. And I always say I've got a lot more out of charity than I've ever given. And I learned a lot from that, and really, really strong governance.
By sitting on a board of a charity?
Yeah. So sitting on a board, and eventually after a little while, chairing a charity for 5 years. That taught me a hell of a lot in good governance. So I think that's really helped as well. So business today has grown. We now made the decision to take offices in the West End a couple of years ago. Again, one of those decisions we look at now and think, why didn't we do years earlier? And expanded a lot in the last few years. So it's a very exciting time. And quite a few years, if you can work out 1988 to 2024, a few years that I've been involved in running a business, but I'm as excited as ever and enthusiastic as ever for the future. We've got quite an amazing team now. I'm very privileged to have my son in the business after he spent several years in real estate. When he told me he'd like to work with us, I sent him over to Warren again, trying to have good governance. And he runs our acquisition team, acquisition and divestment. We've got some great people in construction. And I think in the last few years, we've probably built up the biggest pipeline in the country. So we're told by others.
So you've got 9,000 beds, and that's across Newcastle, Leeds, Manchester, Nottingham, Loughborough, Liverpool, Portsmouth, Sheffield.
So some of those we've sold. So where we're building at the moment, some of those are part of the 5,000 we've built to date and sold. So one of the big things for us is we sold a portfolio a couple of years ago to Lone Star. It was last year to Kane, a few years before to Lone Star. Another portfolio we sold to Arlington. So we've worked with various institutional partners, and the Kane deal is a partnership deal with them. But we had no stock as of the beginning of last year or October the year before, whenever Trustonomics was, and everybody thought the world was going to crash.
So you developed and then exited, realised and returned to investors and sold all the student beds that you developed. Yeah,
but there was no investors in our business. It was our capital. We are looking at the moment for external investors. There's a strategy that we have in mind that I'll come on to for the future. But so we had quite a bit of capital in. Capital came back out. At that time, we were sitting on some sites that we were working on for planning, but we didn't have any potential problems. So I think there were a lot of people that post Trustonomics sat on their hands. We've got stock. We've got issues here and there. We don't want to do anything else. Whereas for us, we had a very clean account, and so we made the most of last year. So last year we actually bought sites capable of building about 3,500 to 4,000 beds on. So it was a phenomenal year for us. Most years were 1,000 to 1,500 beds, and we're looking to continue. So far this year, we've bought a couple of assets. We have, as well as Fusion, an interest in a company called Tri7, which is run by Sam Castle and Daniel Green. And within Tri7, we have an equity partner who we co-invest with, where we're looking to buy income-producing assets capable of redevelopment. So something a developer will look at and think, I would love to buy that, but I cannot wait 5 years. And an investor would look at and think, that's okay, but what the bloody hell am I going to do with that in 5 years? Who wants a shopping centre? Who wants we've got a bingo hall, we've got some retail, we've got an office scheme, we've got a shopping centre within the portfolio where we will manage a tenant, asset manage, get VP, get planning, and then with an ideal focus of turning that into PBSA. Doesn't have to be, but that works really well because that's where our main expertise lies. So we've got the two different businesses we can buy in. That works really well. We're all in one office, and the two teams there work very closely together. Going forwards, what else do we want to be doing? We want to be doing what we're doing even better than we're doing it today. We have an ambition. So far over the years, we've built, sold various portfolios. We had an operating platform. We sold our operating platform. We're now rebuilding that, and that will be up and running for next year when we finish our current phase or first phase of buildings that we currently have. We also want to be building up our own funds. So far we've sold on to various funds who either will hold for a few years, stabilize and then sell, or may hold for a little bit longer. We want to have a partnership with a fund or set up our own fund in time where we go straight to LPs, we bring in the capital, that sits next to us with great governance. We obviously can't go in there and say, this is a super deal, guys, pay X for it. They've got to have their own IC, but we'll be able to work closely with them. And hopefully as well as we have that capital pot, we'll be able to buy existing income, improve it, and look at, which we are currently doing anyway, with or without that fund, look at other strategies within the living sector.
So before we come on to that, can you just talk about, from your perspective right now, what's the perfect PBSA deal? What are you kind of looking for? Across the UK, is it existing sites? Is it land? Is it shopping centres that you can repurpose? Can you just kind of give me a bit of an overview?
Yeah, so it's hugely location driven, and then macro location within that general location. So most Russell Group units, cities, we will look at, and there may be some with an oversupply, but if we can buy a better located building within that city, we will consider it. If we feel there's an oversupply, we're always concerned that, yes, we may be buying potentially the best site in town, but if there's another 1,000 beds that we stick up, everyone else is going to have to reduce their cost, their rental cost. Therefore, that's going to have an effect on ours. So we'd rather go where there's a shortage.
Like Bristol or Hull, York, those kind of spaces? Or
Bristol, yeah. So we bought an office building in Bristol earlier in the year. We've got a scheme in York that it's a regeneration scheme I mentioned earlier, 1,500 odd units that we have in a JV with the fund. So we will have various different partnership deals as we go on. We love a partnership deal, by the way. So if somebody has an existing deal, they want to bring in a developer stroke expert, if I hate using that word about ourselves, but expert in planning, we've had various approaches where how can we add value and improve their returns and do quite well out of it ourselves as well. So York is a prime example there. It's a 9-acre site. So it's big for us, but regeneration is where we want to be. We're involved in a couple of sites in Brent Cross Town, or one hoping to do another, and hugely impressed with everything that goes on in the world of regeneration. We're working there with Argent Related, and it's what they don't know isn't worth knowing. And it's quite fascinating how a larger town is built, and something that we would like to over time get closer to. So it's Russell Group universities. There may be a great story from a non-Russell Group. So we did very well on a scheme in Hatfield, Hertfordshire Uni. There was nothing else there. There was a 116 bed unit around the corner. That was one of the first ones that Warren did before we set up Fusion. And it wasn't the greatest location, but it was the only one at that time. We were right next to the uni. At that time, the time we bought it, they had people sleeping in squash courts there because there was such a shortage. So that was a no-brainer for us. We bought a hotel out of administration, ran the hotel for 3 years, and then got consent, built some student accommodation, and rebuilt a smaller hotel, and found out what the cost of an industrial kitchen is for a hotel. Bloody hell, never again. We're led by Russell Group universities. We're in quite a few cities at the moment. So we're currently building in Manchester, in Nottingham, in Liverpool, in London, and in Birmingham. We've got consent in Loughborough, in Glasgow, and we hope to have another few consents later this year. So we've got quite a lot going on. So I'm mentioning that because what cities are we looking in? We're in quite a lot already. We can build more than one in cities, but we've just got to make sure our timing is right.
And I'm assuming you will create the product to fit that particular market and that particular need.
Yeah, everything is totally driven by that city. So we don't have a standard building. So we will adjust a mix of units depending on that individual market that we really focus on. And we work with various agents, consultants who have their city reports. We then bring that in and peel the onion till we know we're 100% happy with the right mix.
You touched on ambitions for a fund in the future. Something else that we've kind of spoken about is maybe a foray into co-living, right?
Yeah, so we've co-living is a real obvious one for us. That it's we're buying sites, we're getting planning. I think getting planning for co-living is complex because a lot of planners don't understand it, and that's great. We love complexity. A lot of students who have lived in buildings like ours that are pretty snazzy, pretty nice, they want to stay somewhere like that. So we think co-living works really well. We get the basics of it. We'd like to buy our first deal exceptionally well, and off the back of that, then employ a dedicated co-living team to build it.
Well, if you need some help, I might think of a good headhunter you could talk to.
Yeah, maybe you could recommend me to someone. We don't see co-living as scalable as as students. It works in some cities, and we think it works in some cities brilliantly, but not many cities. London, Bristol, Manchester, Dublin, Edinburgh. Off the top of my head, those are the ones we'd probably be comfortable with in the UK.
And why is that?
Because I think with co-living, it's meant to be this cheap place to live. It's not that cheap.
You've got to be earning a fortune, right?
Maybe not a fortune. You've got to be earning pretty decent money. And the likelihood is you're going to be in your 20s, 30s. So if you've got to look at demographics where people in their 20s, 30s are earning decent money, and there's not a vast amount of people in that many cities. There's
pockets.
Yeah. So London, we think we could build several buildings. Bristol maybe one or two. Manchester maybe one. Dublin, big tech community there, and lots of people that live in Dublin that are not from Dublin. So that's where we think it would do very well, and then possibly move it into Europe. Students, we'd like at the right time to go into Europe. Warren and I spent a lot of time on that pre-pandemic. Then when we were able to, we went for a walk a month or two into COVID, each with a little list of things that we want to talk about with each other. And we both had on the list, let's halt Europe for now. There was just too much to do here in keeping the business ticking over nicely at that point. It was a concerning time. We had various buildings under construction that were slowing down, tenants that wanted to leave. So we had to focus on that. I'm really pleased we didn't do anything in Europe then. I think we would now look at it very, very differently. And we were flying over there with our team. I mentioned my son earlier. He spent a lot of time previously working in Spain, in Lisbon, so knew those markets better than we did. He was out there. It's really tough to do it yourself, and that's what we wanted to do. I think now, as our thoughts have matured a little bit, is we need to find partners, and in the future we will be doing that and looking in several countries and building a brand that is a recognised brand, not just in the UK.
And specifically, what type of partners? Just for people listening to this who might have some ideas.
Yeah, I think what we'd probably be looking for is where we were 10 years ago. We were quite an efficient house builder. And I think the reality is, even though we like to think we're quite smart, we're not. But we didn't realise what our capabilities were. And I think if there's someone that knows a local market, knows planning, knows legals, we can provide the funding. We can provide the ideas and help build the platform that is great for us and could be really exciting for their businesses too, that we would get huge pleasure from.
So there's the European expansion piece, there's co-living and potential fund opportunity. There's a lot on your plate and a lot of drive and ambition that you've got to kind of scale and take advantage of in this next window.
Yeah, and we'd like to do it by the end of this month. No, we're ambitious. We're having a lot of fun, and probably that's the most important thing. We've got to have fun, and whoever we work with, we've got to enjoy working with.
Have you ever taken any formal professional qualifications?
Is anyone listening to this? No.
Have you ever felt that's held you back?
No, I considered at one time doing a degree, working in evenings and weekends. And I think I spent about $2,000, downloaded a load of paperwork and thought, I can't do this. I think I tried it for about a month. Married with kids, plenty of hobbies, just couldn't do it. It would have been, I think it's a nice to have. In my view on degrees is probably more important today than it was when I started. Definitely more important. So I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from studying and probably going on and not just doing a degree, but a master's afterwards. In the world we live in, probably, or our business currently lives in, probably everyone we talk to is exceptionally well educated. I think there's negatives with being exceptionally well educated. You don't like to get anything wrong, and therefore you may not take a risk. But I think overall it's good. There's been times over the years where I thought it would have been nice. I think it's going back, your first job you get, if you haven't got a degree, you're not going to get the right job today, unfortunately. Your second job, it definitely helps. Your third, it helps a little bit as time moves on. Unless you've done a very specific degree for what you do, I don't think it adds any value, as I see it. I'm sure I'm wrong and biased because I left school at 17, but that's how I see the world. I
know you mentor a lot of people in the real estate space. Have you ever had a mentor yourself?
About to. So we've appointed a couple of advisors to our board recently, and I'm not sure whether that's properly mentoring or not, but that's becoming something now as we go to the next level more in the fund world that we need some help with. So
obviously touched on earlier in our conversation, you sit on the board of a lot of charities. You also do a lot of charity work in the business as well. Can you just elaborate and expand on that too?
Sure. It's something we all love doing. And probably the best day we had as a business last year was an away day out the office where a small charity, Give, Gift, Share, very good, and everyone should look it up and donate, who is run by 2 school teachers who realized in the pandemic what a problem it is for schools. Kids at schools, and they don't have enough money to eat, and they eat rubbish because of that. So something we got involved with, and it started actually, that particular charity, our involvement started when I walked past my PA's desk with her big double screen full of a huge spreadsheet. And I said, "What's this?" She says, "Our hamper list for Christmas." I said, "What does it come to? Who are we sending this to? What a load of bollocks. We're sending this to people that can afford to eat. And they're people that we give business to. They know we love them.
We pay handsome fees to them."
We don't need to give them any more. Write to them all. We're not doing it this year, and we're going to do a charity.
Yeah, we're giving your gift to someone else who needs it more than you.
So we did that, and we then took the office to help this team put their food parcels together. So we had to go out. We got split into groups of 4, and we each went to different supermarkets, and we had to buy, I think it was £4 per bag, and we had to put as much food in there as we could for their family, not just for the kid at school, but the kid at school and his family. And shopping really isn't my field, but we did it, and we could not believe, and trust me, my wife now knows this very well. I keep reminding her what the difference in cost of food can be, and what we could buy for £4. So we bought all this. We then went back. We had to quickly put it in bags. It was a bit of competition going back to them. Are we competitive? I'm sure my team beat Warren's as well. And then when we did it, we then delivered it to a school. The most amazing thing there is Adam and I, who I mentioned, we were at school at 15, 16, 17 together. We took it to a school that was 100 meters from the school that we were at. So it really brought to home this need. So that's an example of what we do. There's currently a mental health charity that we have been helping. There's another charity that I've recently been asked to chair that we as a business are going to be working very closely with. And they deal with kids that have had either mental health issues or illnesses that meant they've had to take time off school. And therefore, if you miss a year of education, you've been ill, so you're unhappy for being ill, you're now put down a year, your mates are flying, kids can be nasty, and therefore you're feeling very isolated. So we will work very hard with that kid to make sure he goes back up to his year as quickly as he can. So that's a big push. And we invite our team to come up with ideas that we can support. And it's a big thing for us. We've looked at, so for example, at Glasgow, we just got planning for a scheme in Glasgow. I went up there a couple of weeks ago to look at the site, and living, we haven't knocked the building down yet, but so living within the existing building that's all closed up, were 3 homeless people. And in that section of Glasgow, there's a lot of homeless. So our view there is, and what shaped from that is, what can we do in each city to help, where is there a need that we can help with? So homeless is something we're going to focus on in Glasgow. And it's great. We love it. We're giving something back. We're thinking of different ways that we can get our students to support as well, and try and install that culture of giving into everybody. So a view is we may have an evening or 2 within our buildings that students can fundraise for, and we will double whatever they fundraise. So, and that will go to the homeless in Glasgow. It could go to somebody else in Birmingham, somebody else in London, etc., etc. And we love it.
Amazing. Well, look, as we draw to a close, a question that I ask everyone on the podcast is, if I gave you £500 million worth of capital, who are the people, what property, and which place would you deploy that capital?
So firstly, we'd repay our gold cards. So I think going forwards, we've spoken about various strategies that we would like to be doing, or not would like to be, that we will be doing. I think we would invest it into people, not all of it. A little bit into people, into buying businesses in the right locations, or investing into businesses that we can then partner to drive the business forwards there. We would look at other strategies in the living world. I think if we probably deploy maybe 20% of that into longer term sites that we spoke about, the Tri-7 type deals, the shopping centers, maybe something with 10 years away, 12 years away. We've realized with our business now, that started as a couple of property traders working with mobile phones in the back of a car, that we've got a potential legacy to leave here, and we want to build this up. So the more stock we can buy for a longer term, so that we don't have to worry about where we're going to buy from in the year 2044, is great.
Amazing. Well, look, you've had a phenomenal career, Nigel, and you've been so generous sharing the stories and backgrounds that you've had with me. I've been really inspired, and I know a lot of the listeners will take away a phenomenal amount from what you've touched on. I think I'll probably have to get Warren on the podcast in the future, and then maybe check the downloads and see who gets the most downloads or views.
Don't do that, Tim. He'll only get disappointed.
Well, I'm really excited to see what you and Warren and the wider team go on to build. I know whatever you do, you'll make it a phenomenal success, and you'll have a lot of fun, and you'll leave a lasting impact along the way. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the People, Property, Place podcast. If you found it insightful, feel free to share it with a friend or colleague. Give us a rating, like, or comment. It helps tremendously. It'd be great to hear from you on LinkedIn. I'm super open-minded to recommendations of guests that we should have on the show or areas of the market we should explore further. So do drop me a message. The People, Property, Place podcast is powered by Rockbourne. The team recruit leadership and future leadership hires for real estate owners, funds, investors, and developers. So if you're looking to hire top talent for your business, head over to the website www.rockbourne.com, where you'll be able to find a wealth of information, or feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn. Have a great day wherever you are, and I look forward to catching you next time.